Now, before I begin talking about the current geopolitics, let me tell you a little bit about history. You see, historically, there have been just a couple of major world powers. Lately, it has been U.S., but previously, England was ruling the world. They had colonies all over the world, everywhere in the world. All the countries that play cricket today were ruled by England. So you have India, Pakistan, this Arab world, you have a lot of these countries. All over the world, you had England ruling. And then you had France, which had French colonies all over, Africa, everywhere. Then you had Spain, the entire Latin America up until Mexico speaks Spanish because Spain ruled here. Same goes for Philippines. They speak Spanish, the corrupted version of Spanish, because Spain ruled there. So you have all of these European powers who have been ruling all over the world, and England being the biggest of them all. Now, what happened was, right at the brink of World War II, there were four major powers in the world. There was a sleeping giant of US, a sleeping giant called Soviets, which was today's Russia and Eastern Europe. Some of these countries were Eastern Orthodox Christians, and these are Western Christians, that is Catholics and Protestants. So you had these two sleeping giants, and you had these active colonies who were ruling the whole world. You had UK, Spain, Portugal, Italy. You had all these countries expanding across the world, making their colonies, when all of a sudden Germany decided to take over these headquarters and thus taking over their colonies all over the world. So when Germany took over the entire Europe, England realized they're next. So England called America and asked them to help them defeat Germany. So America decided to help England on two conditions. First, England would have to give every single piece of technology to America, which means they have to give them the jet engine, the atomic bomb. Every single great invention of the 20th century was handed over by UK to US, who decided to manufacture those in their industrial powerhouses, and that is how US prospered, and that's how they were able to develop all these modern-day luxuries. The other condition that America laid down was UK had to pull out from all of its colonies from all across the world. US was not going to invest completely in the war, only to have UK enjoy its colonies while US was doing all the hard work trying to defeat Hitler, defeat Germany. So UK agreed with both the conditions. Once they agreed, America decided to participate in the war, but they said that we can't kill Germany alone. We need Russia's help to defeat Hitler from this side, while we come from this side. And that is when America decided to call Russia, and Russia was skeptical of this partnership because they thought after the war is over, America is simply going to take all the spoils of war, and UK is going to continue with its colonization programs, and Spain and France and Portugal, they're all going to have their own slice of the cake, and they're just going to leave Russia out in the cold. Now, at the time, America assured that is not what they had in mind, and Russia agreed, but that is exactly what America did after the war ended. But that is for another day. So getting back to the war, America told Russia that they're going to supply them with all kinds of supplies, that is, military supplies, food supplies, boots on the ground, howitzers, assault rifles. They gave food to every single Soviet soldier for 1 year. 1 year worth of food supply stock for every single Russian soldier, Soviet soldier rather, because Soviet means there were a lot of these countries who were part of USSR. So Russia is actually the country that helped America defeat Hitler. It was Russian army, it was Soviet army that came to Berlin, that came to Germany and defeated Hitler, while US was trying to get rid of German occupation in France and Spain and Poland. So what happened was, after the World War II, when America eventually was victorious, it was America who decided to drop a bomb on Japan right at the end of the war. Because Japan in the meantime was expanding, and it was taking over China. It was also taking over some of these colonies that France, UK, Spain had in here. So when Japan started hurting their colonies, America, the ally of Europe, attacked Japan, and because they did not want the war to go on for another 10 years, just like it was going on for 6 years with Germany, they simply dropped an atomic bomb on 2 cities in Japan, and that is how they were able to bring the war to a quick end. Now, when Russia saw that America has developed a new technology called the atomic bomb, they obviously realized that we have entered a new age altogether, and war is not going to be the solution. We got to sit down on a table and sign papers now. Japan completely surrendered, became a proxy state of America. Until this day, they do exactly what America says. America told them, you can't ever invest in military again, ever, and Japan has since never invested in military. If Japan needs assistance, military assistance in case of another invasion, they're going to have to make a phone call to America, and America will be obligated to protect Japan. That's the deal. And this is the reason why Japan has not invested at all in military. As a result, has saved a lot of money and used that money into good investment, that is investing in power, water, electricity, infrastructure, technology, and all the new modern day inventions and gizmos that you see coming from Japan. The electronics, the miracle of industrial powerhouses, the cars, automobiles, engines. They're all coming from Japan, more efficient, more technologically advanced, mainly because Japan has had enough money to be able to invest in real scientific research, R&D, thanks to this no military investment policy. So once the World War II was over, America became the new superpower on the planet, and UK was just pushed to the back. They just have to work on the sidelines. They have to assist America in everything America is doing because it's America that is responsible for saving face of UK. Eventually, all of Western Europe, that is, all the countries that America liberated, Spain, France, Germany, Portugal, all of these started having US bases. And today you have something called the European Union. So these are basically a collection of countries that cater to American dictates. UK is already doing what America says, and Japan, of course, is doing what America says. So basically America is controlling the world, that part of the world that was already controlling the rest of the world. Now, in the meantime, this huge country is seeing that the whole world is now being dictated by America, whereas it was them who liberated Germany and all of Europe. So America and Russia start developing cold relations, hence they move into Cold War. Now, both of them have nuclear weapons, and when John F. Kennedy was the president of U.S., Russia decided to install nuclear weapons in Cuba, aiming at America, because America decided to install nuclear weapons in Romania and Turkey, aiming at Russia. Eventually, better sense prevailed, and both of them decided to dismantle their nuclear program. They're not going to kill each other and the planet in the process because of their Cold War. And eventually, in 1989, when the Soviet Union broke up into several smaller countries, America signed an agreement with Russia that they're not going to include these newly created small countries in their NATO European Union project. They're not going to include these countries in their Western European project. That means they're not going to install their NATO military, they're not going to install their nuclear facilities there, they're not going to install their military bases there, Navy ships and all of that. But that's exactly what they did. America betrayed Russia, started partnering with these states, asking them to start looking west, not east. But there was a problem in this plan because, you see, these countries, which now became independent, are still ethnically Russian. They speak much more similar to the way the Russians speak. They eat food that is much more similar to what the Russians eat, and so forth. So they're not very welcomed in Western Europe. Most of the people who come from Eastern Europe to Western Europe are looked down upon because they don't have the same job opportunities. They're not as well versed with the Western European culture. So they're not really getting the good part of the EU deal anyway. However, from the east, they're getting gas. Russia has gas. So to leave Russia altogether would be a difficult decision, despite having become independent countries. And Russia realizes this. So Russia had an agreement with Ukraine that even though you're now a separate country, an independent country, this little island, a peninsula called Crimea, would be leased out by Ukraine to Russia for 99 years, wherein Russia could install their navy in here. Well, this was possible only as long as Ukraine had a president that was pro-Russian. Eventually there was a coup, and that president was toppled, and then a Western, that is US dictated president came into power, and he suppressed the people who were pro-Russian. So Russia realized as soon as this guy is going to be considered, recognized fully by the Western powers as the new president, they're going to kick Russia out from Crimea. So Russia militarily intervened in Ukraine and took over Crimea completely. So Ukraine is kind of divided like this now. There's pro-Russian side and then there's pro-Western side. So Russia says that let's have a referendum, similar to the Brexit referendum, similar to the Scotland referendum that was held prior to the Brexit referendum. So they held a referendum. They said, let's put to vote, what do the Crimean people want? Do they want to be on the side of Russia or Western Europe, that is pro-US? And the people of Crimea voted 94% to be with Russia. This is how Putin checkmated Europe and US. So now they have a legitimate reason to be in Crimea. Now, you must understand that there's a gas pipeline running from here and going to Europe, and there's another gas pipeline running from here going to Germany. So it is through Germany that France, Spain, and Italy, and some of these other countries in the EU get Russian gas. So Germany is actually very strategically important for Europe, the entire Europe, and hence for US, it is extremely important that Germany remains on the side of UK and US. Because if Germany starts getting pro-Russia, they already get gas from there, they can start having good relationship from them, and since these countries are dependent on the German gas, they're pretty much going to side with Germany, and then UK would be left out in the cold, and US would not have an influence on Europe. So when Russia took over Crimea, and now with the referendum, America decided to hit Russia with sanctions, which means Russia cannot buy medicines, cannot buy essential food items, cannot buy a lot of stuff that is required for your day-to-day luxuries, day-to-day lifestyle, and Russia is going to suffer because they are going to be put under sanctions, which means they can neither import essential stuff nor can they export their gas to a lot of countries, including Europe. But you see, when America did this, Europe was already reluctant to implement these sanctions. Why? Because they need the Russian gas. Because when it is cold, it's wintertime, they're all going to freeze to death. So Germany's thinking, wait a minute, US is getting gas from Mexico and Canada, and it has a lot of friendly allies in the Muslim world, and for the people who are not friendly, it basically just attacks them and takes all of their gas, like Iraq. So they have sufficient gas supplies. Even if Russia doesn't supply gas in Europe, they don't care. It is just us who are not going to have gas, and it's us who are going to fall into a recession because our industrial capabilities are going to be knocked out because we don't have sufficient gas to run our cars and our factories. So they are getting increasingly reluctant on being harsh, being strict with Russia, and Russia knows this. What did Russia do in the meantime? Russia decided to call up China. Russia says, I'm going to give you gas because China is as big as European Union and they need about the same amount of gas as the entire EU. So Russia found another customer in China and signed a 30-year contract and said that I'm going to supply you gas for 30 years. So China came on board because Russia gave extremely cheap prices of gas to China, which China obviously took. So they need their gas. Russia has gas. Russia is having a hard time with their Western customers, so Russia found an Eastern customer. No, Russia and China are together. So now if you attack Russia, you're basically attacking China's source of gas supply. So you're pretty much going to be fighting China too, because China is going to do everything it can to stop hurting itself, hurting its economy. So now Russia and China are together. In the meantime, when these countries were hitting Russia with economic sanctions, Russia took it. But now when Russia is not going to supply gas to these countries, they are going to suffer. So Germany then decided, you know what, we should all sit on the table and we should not fight and we should have an amicable dispute resolution. Well, that is not just because they're nice people, it's simply because they're aware that if Russia decides to turn off the gas supply, it is them who's going to be hurt, not so much Russia. So America realizes that they're not going to have a lot of influence on EU, especially when it comes to hitting Russia with sanctions, unless Europe gets its own source of independent gas supply besides Russia. And where do you have gas as much as Russia or even more? The Arab world. This is where majority of the gas lies on the planet. And this country, although not a friend of US, it is this country which is a friend of US. It's called Qatar. And they have enough gas as Russia, as Iran. They actually have more gas than Russia and Iran. So America decided to build a pipeline from Qatar to Saudi Arabia, to Jordan, to Syria, to Turkey, and then to Europe. And hence, they decided that they're going to get independence from Russia. As soon as they get energy independence from Russia, they can ask EU to put economic sanctions on Russia so that Russia would get out of Ukraine, get out of Crimea, and then everything would be fine. Why do they want Russia to get out of Crimea so bad? Well, you see, Crimea is the only naval port that Russia has. It is the only warm water that Russia has. The rest of the waters are all frozen. Russia doesn't have access to anything besides this warm water. And if Russia has to have any influence in Europe, especially in a military showdown, they need to have control of the Black Sea. Hence, they need to have control of Crimea. And US and Europe understand that this is the only thing that keeps Russia influencing Europe, in addition to the gas pipelines. So they need to kick Russia out of Crimea. Hence, they decided to make a gas pipeline from Qatar to European Union. However, despite having puppets installed in all of these countries that supply gas, there is one country that refuses to be a puppet of America, and that happens to be Syria. You see, the president of Syria said no when America asked them to allow the gas pipeline to be built through their route. You need Syria to be on board, otherwise the gas pipeline can't be built. They offered Syria whatever they wanted, but the president decided not to go ahead and give this deal. Why? Because, number one, they're a defense ally of Russia, and Russia asked them not to, and they're simply abiding by their friends and their contract. And more importantly, Iran has just about the same amount of gas as this Arab country, and Iran was making its own pipeline from Iran to Iraq to Syria, and then bypassing Turkey and going straight to Greece. This was known as the Islamic pipeline. Iran also wanted to extend this pipeline to the east, called the IPI, Iran, Pakistan, India pipeline, because India is as big of a customer of gas as China and Europe. So America decided to cut Iran deal on both ends. I'm going to come to the eastern portion in a second. But on the western side, America decided to bombard Iraq so that this pipeline could not be made. America is currently bombarding Syria so that this pipeline is not made. And they're trying to completely change the regime for the last 4 years so that this pipeline is built. Anybody who opposes the pipeline is going to be demonized. Now, on the eastern side, Iran said, just like the way we're making pipeline here, we can supply gas to you, India, and then you don't have to be dependent on the Arab states. Now, America decided that if China and Russia are already on one side, and if India goes in this, then you have three of the most influential developing nations coming together, which nobody else can topple. So America decided to go on a charm offensive in India. They decided to gift India with whatever India asked for, so that India would not be a part of this triangular friendship zone. And India was asked not to go ahead with the Iran pipeline. Rather, America gave India nuclear fuel and said that you can have your own nuclear reactors that you can use for generating electricity, something that Iran has been trying to do and has been completely disallowed by everybody. Now, all that they say that Iran is not supposed to have nuclear fuel, even if it is for peaceful purposes. But India is being gifted with nuclear fuel by America. Now, this happened when George Bush was the president. India took the deal, obviously, but then they still continued with the plan of Iran, Pakistan, India pipeline, despite having nuclear fuel now, such a beautiful gift from America. Because Iran decided to slash the prices of their gas even further and offer an even more long-term contract, which was just too good a deal to refuse. So America decided there's no real solution to pulling India out of this contract unless we offer our own pipeline to India. And that is when they decided to take gas from Turkmenistan to Afghanistan to Pakistan to India, known as TAPI, T-A-P-I, TAPI pipeline. Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline. Why Turkmenistan? Because they have almost as much gas as Iran, Qatar, and Russia. But you see, Turkmenistan is a huge puppet state of America. The oil fields of Turkmenistan are owned by Israel, which is dictating what America is doing. So Turkmenistan gas means basically it is a U.S. sanctioned deal. So U.S. said, we are going to give you a gas supply, just like Iran is offering to give you. So you don't need to buy from Iran. You can take the TAPI pipeline gas. So India said, all right, do what you want to do. And that is when America decided to bombard Afghanistan. It has been doing that for the last 15 years. Why have they been in Afghanistan for the last 15 years? They're trying to make a pipeline. In addition to stealing the lithium of Afghanistan, which is about $1 trillion worth of lithium, what do you need lithium for? Every car, every cell phone, every computer requires lithium-ion batteries. So you need lithium for that. So every computer company, Dell, HP, Acer, all of these companies, and then you have the Ford and GM, all these automobile companies, and then you have cell phone companies like Apple. All of these companies elect the presidents, donate money, get the Afghanistan war sanctioned, and are sucking out all the lithium from Afghanistan. In addition to that, they're growing opium. The best opium is in Afghanistan, in quantity and quality. And they need to grow opium to be able to sell it and make a lot of money from it. Because in the Buddhist religion in China, they take opium. If you want to control China, you must control opium. So in addition to these extra bonuses they're getting from Afghanistan in terms of lithium and opium and all that, you have a geostrategic reason to be in Afghanistan because you need to make a TAPI pipeline. The TAPI pipeline is currently under construction. It is expected to be operational in 2019. So India is going to have its own independent source of gas. Now they can say no to Iran, and that's what eventually India did. India said, we're not going to take the Iran deal. And that is how they were able to cut Iran on the east. And they've already cut Iran on the west, because right now you have the Syria war going on by the name of ISIS. You have this ISIS. America says we have to kill ISIS because these are horrible human beings, and obviously what they're doing on TV is horrible. So America has a great reason to be in Syria and in Iraq, because these were the prize countries of the pipeline. So they're in Iraq and Syria on the pretext of fighting ISIS. Whereas in reality, they're just there so that the pipeline does not get built, and then their own pipeline gets the construction completed. Now, they did the exact same thing prior to ISIS. They had the Taliban in Afghanistan. So initially when they were in Afghanistan, they said, we are there because we care about these women in Afghanistan who are suffering under the horrible repressive regime of Taliban. So we got to give independence to these poor people. That's exactly what they said in Iraq, giving independence from their brutal dictator. Most people don't realize that these Talibans and these dictators came into power because America allowed them to come into power. America actually propelled them to power. America installed them on their thrones. And as far as the women are concerned, well, these Muslim women, how is it that a Christian country is now so considerate for Muslim women when their best friend Saudi Arabia is suppressing its women's rights for the last God knows how many decades? So they're not really concerned about the women. Anybody should know that. They are only concerned about making sure that Russia does not get its partners as it is looking for. Hence the pipeline plan. So now you have the TAPI to India. You have cut out Iran's westward pipeline with your own pipeline, and you have cut out Iran's eastward pipeline with their own. So this is what's going on in here. Now China is looking for additional sources of stable gas supply, because China is now with Russia. So they know that these guys are not going to listen to America. So China was actually trying to make a pipeline from Myanmar. So when they're buying gas from the Arab world, it comes in ships, and it is transported in this manner. And then they can take the gas from Myanmar and take it straight into China. So America decided to make a complete chaos in Myanmar, and right now you have a fight going on between the Buddhists and Muslims in this country. The UN says the Muslims in Myanmar are the most persecuted people on the planet, and nobody's doing anything about it because nobody wants to do anything about it, because chaos is the reason you're not going to have a pipeline, you're not going to have a stable government. Hence, there's not going to be any advantage for China. Despite that, China is moving ahead with this plan of making a pipeline in Myanmar. Because right now, China needs to take gas with this route. You see, China has to go in this manner and get its gas. This is how China gets its gas. And you have 7 countries here who are in the way of China. You have Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines, Cambodia, Vietnam. You have Taiwan and Hong Kong who try to be different countries on their own. So you have so many countries whose waters are being either trespassed or probably borderline trespassed, or U.S. would like them to be at least more strict with their sea waters. They don't want Chinese ships going through this route. Well, if China's not going to have the gas coming from this route, they're not going to have a lot of other options. So China is not going to listen to America when any of these countries says that this is not China's water. So right now, America is trying to make a deal with these countries. It's called TPP, in which they're going to be able to have a lot of influence on these countries once they sign this contract. America is eventually going to install their own bases here, their own warships, their own rules, so that China is completely choked when it comes to having ships passing from here. And remember, China is making everything. All the industrial miracle that you see across the world, everything is being manufactured in China. Every country is having goods that are made in China. So if you're not going to allow Chinese ships to move out or to come back in to buy the gas, then you're going to have a big problem with China. China is not going to sit back and take it. So America is currently shaking the whole world up. They don't want Russia to have any influence over Europe. They don't want China to have any influence in the South China Sea. And you only have India, which is big enough to counter China. So America is gifting India with everything it can. In the process, a lot of Muslim countries are dying because they happen to have all the oil and gas. Now, all of this is happening because these Western Christians and Eastern Christians do not get along with each other. They have not gotten along with each other since the year 1000. That is when these two people split. 1080 means 1,000 years after the death of Jesus Christ. Now, the Muslims believe that Jesus Christ never died. He was raised up alive. He's going to come back to judge humanity. And they believe that he's going to come back for the Christians, not for the Muslims. He's not going to come back with any new message. He's going to come back as a follower of Prophet Muhammad, who himself said that Jesus Christ was a prophet of God. They believe that he's going to come back to judge Christians, judge humanity, which is predominantly Christian. And when the Christians are going to think they've done wonders and miracles in the name of Jesus, Jesus is going to ask God to testify and say that I never asked these Christians to worship me. It is them who decided to worship me. I only asked them to worship one Lord, one God. And I was bringing the message of the Lord. I was not God myself. I asked you to worship the Lord, not worship me. I asked you to follow me in worshiping the Lord, worshiping one God. Now that one God in Arabic is Allah. And that is what Muslims believe. They believe Jesus was the messenger of God, and they believe in one God. These Muslims have been gifted with gas, oil and gas. Eastern Orthodox Christians have been gifted with oil and gas. The Protestant Christians, which oppose America, have been gifted with oil and gas. So you're kind of like getting a pattern here.